पोस्ट ग्रेजुएट गवर्नमेंट कॉलेज सेक्टर 11 में आज स्पेशल लेक्चर बाय प्रोफेसर मोहंती ऑन इंडो यूएस कल्चरल डिप्लोमेसी पे दिया जा रहा है, जिस इंटरेक्टिव लेक्चर है जिसमें स्टूडेंट पार्टिसिपेट कर रहे हैं। आइए आपको दिखाते हैं।
In the 30-kilometer radius, we can easily find 5 to 7 McDonald's, probably 20 to 30 Pizza Huts and Domino's.
For each country, why are they there if everyone wants to follow the path of love?
Okay, the answer is a very fine question you are asking. Because you live in this world, my dear, in a couple of after so many years, I will pass away. You are the generation next, so I must answer you. Napoleon once said, I believe in God, but I keep the powder dry, meaning gunpowder dry. I believe in God, but I keep the powder dry. 9/10 of humanity, they are characterized by what Thomas Hobbes said about human nature. Poor, nasty, brutish shot. So love, of course, but can Gandhian love defeat the Asuric force of Hitler and Nazism? Extermination camps. Sri Aurobindo said that if it is a question of British brand of militarism and German brand of fascism, I will tactically support the British. Because he said if Hitler wins, human civilization will recede 4 centuries backward. And this is much before. In 1944 itself, the advancing armies of Russia, led by Zhukov, and the American army, led by Eisenhower, for the first time discovered the concentration camps in Germany and Poland. For the first time, people came to know what was the agenda of the Nazis to exterminate the Jews itself. So we must develop the means to protect ourselves also. Very necessary, because the world is not created in our image. I'll give you one small example.
Our ex-Prime Minister Indira Gandhi has introduced 42nd Amendment in our Constitution, and she added 3 words in our Constitution which were socialist, secular and integrity. But in my opinion, there was no need of those 2 words, socialist and secular, because Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar has put in our preamble equality of equal status and opportunity, which would मतलब जो socialist के बारे में बताता है, और उनने ये भी कहा था लिबर्टी ऑफ फेथ एंड वर्शिप विच वुड डिग्निफाई सेकुलरिज्म. एंड उस टाइम 1976 के इंडिया में उतनी लिटरेसी हाई भी नहीं थी, बहुत लो लिटरेसी थी. तो उस टाइम सोशलिज्म के 2 मतलब होते थे, एक तो मार्क्सिस्ट सोशलिज्म था और एक गांधीयन सोशलिज्म था. तो अगर ये और क्या कहते हैं जो सेकुलरिज्म था उसके भी एक वेस्टर्न कॉन्सेप्ट था, जिसका मतलब ये था कि स्टेट रिलीजन में इंटरफेयर बिल्कुल नहीं करेगा, और एक था इंडियन कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ सोशलिज्म, वो सेकुलरिज्म, कि स्टेट वैसे इंटरफेयर नहीं करेगा रिलीजन में, बट अगर कोई प्रॉब्लम आई तो उसमें स्टेट इंटरफेयर कर सकता है. लेकिन अगर वो जो 2 टर्म्स ऐड करके प्रीएम्बल में इंदिरा गांधी ने काफ़ी लोगों को कंफ्यूज कर दिया था. सो वो किसी पॉलिटिकल रीजन के कारण किया था या फिर किसी और चीज़ के कारण किया था. और
okay, I have understood. No, was it done because of some noble reasons, or was it done for some political reasons? Now, if you define politics as all power relationship, there is nothing like apolitical. Everything is political, because you are taking sides also. If you are taking on the sides of the depressed, that is political. If you are saying I'm neutral, that is also the politics of neutrality. We don't want to take sides. If you are partisan, you are also taking a stand of some kind. So politics per se, as George Orwell said, is not bad. But politics is for what purposes? Regardless of what the reason that Mrs. Gandhi might not have done, is there some truth in what they say, what she said? Secularism and socialism. Let me talk about these 2 things. She might have a rationale because she was fighting against the syndicate at that time. And she thought that by nationalization, for example, she's going to win the election. Politicians always have a consideration. Finally, they have to win an election. It's not easy to win an election. If I stand for the election, for the MP, I might get 10. I might not get all the votes of my relatives also. So it's not easy to win an election. So we must understand what electoral politics is all about. Is there a truth of socialism? Today, I feel there is a truth of socialism. Because socialism of the earlier Bolshevist kind may not be relevant. But socialism, when it talks about the economic interests of large masses of the people who are steeped in illiteracy, in economic backwardness, surely socialism is necessary. And there is no government worth the day, right up to today, who is not talking about the economic needs or the medical needs, educational needs of masses of people. To that extent, socialism is necessary.
Sir, in the starting of your lecture, you mentioned feminism, women leadership. So there's this question that has been irritating me from many years. Like in the Indian Parliament, we have seen that seats has to be reserved for the women. Either in, you can see in any aspects of the life, that why we have to reserve the seats? Why is there no equal competition between men and women? So can we say that it is a result of masculine toxicity that you said, that men do not want women to be at the top of anything?
That is partially true. Why are we thinking of affirmative action? Because historically women have been disenfranchised. As I said, right up to 1930 or 40. Even in a emancipated country like France, I mean, liberty, equality, fraternity. The Statue of Liberty was donated by France to America. And yet, the underbelly. And then, you know, the French, the awards that they give, I think they're functioning in a paradoxical manner, almost like Janus. Because the biggest, you know, the Holocaust places were by France. In French Guiana, Devil's Island, for example. At the same time, you sing praise. So women have been marginalized by many of the Western democracies. And in order to give them a level playing field, affirmative action is required. Like the SCs and STs and the depressed classes also. It is fine to say that let them compete. But you can, at the same time, you are pushing them into the domestic boundaries also. They have to cook. They have to do the childbearing. And if men and women are working, the man comes at the end of the day, chai lao, samosa lao, bachon ko samalo, and I will go for a smoke. So you can see the duplicity of patriarchy itself, which is why the Indian state is giving level playing field. And of course, later on there may not be need also. They're doing very well without reservation also. But in IIT, they say, in the case of Western literature, British literature, American literature, they said 10 dead white male and 1 Emily Dickinson. So who has created the canon? Not the women, the men, the male critics. We have the situation of largely female students and male professoriate. I am not saying this. Gerald Graff is saying literature against itself. And therefore, the birth of Norton anthologies of literature. Therefore, the books by Sandra Gilbert and Susan Goober. Therefore, the importance of Mary Wollstonecraft, Mary Shelley, Virginia Woolf, and Kate Willett. So I think we should read about these texts and not reading and passing judgment in a dismissive and stereotypical manner. That is absolutely not going to take anywhere. So I think when we say knowledge liberates, this is exactly what I mean. There is a need now, and hopefully there will not be any need. And my father told me, don't ask for any favor, do it yourself, I'll say. So I think it depends on self-reliance also. There might be a need with many people. See, they're number one. What reservation was Tina Dabi had when she stood first in the UPSC? Tina Dabi, she didn't go through any reservation. Today we see the first 4 or 5 positions in the UPSC, the Hartford, are by women themselves also. They are not availing of any reservation also. You can see that. So to relegate them to say that, you know, they need this, they need that, they may not. When they are scoring, they are becoming fighter pilots also. So what is the preventing this, apart from our own prejudice? So I completely agree with you. Today there is a necessity. Tomorrow they may not be. And those who are crossing, we congratulate them more than others.
Western and English languages and education comes in the India. So I think that the Purans and Vedas that had solutions to most of the problems like life related to life, marriage life, sciences, mathematics, economics, approximately every field that covered. So they are disappearing day by day. And if we took the language, so Sanskrit, that is known to be the mother and that gave birth to many languages across the world, it is like not considered much important in nowadays. So I want to know your views about this.
My view is that we have to recognize the truth of the ancient systems. Vedas, Upanishads, Zindavasta and Puran, all these are fine. But I will not buy the fact that all answers are there in our own scriptures. Because our own thought also believed in Sati Pratha. I certainly don't believe in Sati Pratha. And the manner in which, for example, the Chatur Varna become a kind of a rigid caste system. I don't believe in casteism. I don't believe in the Parda system of the Indians, for example, the women. And so there are many aspects of our own kind of a culture and system. That is why Simone de Beauvoir wrote Lesbian Sex, Second Sex. There were all these women also have come and written. And male reformers also. Narayana Guru was there. And the Bhakti tradition of Mirabai was also there. So the ancient but usable. And Ashish Nandi uses a very fine term. Usable tradition, usable modernity. What is usable for me, we should use for the tradition and the modernity. Modernity cannot be treated as homogeneous entity. And tradition also cannot be treated as homogeneous also. So diversity is very important. In the diverse fields of learning and knowledge system, what is useful for me? Sri Aurobindo in the Foundations of Indian Culture, he is saying, in the external influences and Indian culture, he is saying, that which helps you to expand. And you know, Swadharma and Swabhava and Gita says, what is my Swadharma? What is my Swabhava? Your Swadharma is unique to yourself because you are the product of a unique samskara. Whatever is helping you, you do. Whatever is helping your friend, she does. That means multiplicity of approaches. Sometimes Principal Madam has to also threaten you, okay? Because love may not really work. But couple of times it works. When I was a Vice Chancellor, there was a person in there, you know, she was an assistant, an outsourced person. Everybody came and told me, she's all the time writing present in advance. 5 days in advance, she's writing present. And then this girl came to meet me. This woman, young woman came to meet me. She was working. And before I came, you know, there are always the people who come and whisper in the eyes of in the ears of the authority figure. Sir, सोचना चाहिए, बदमाश लड़की है, ये बदमाश आदमी है, उसको सावधान से रहो. The self-appointed guardians, advisors, self-appointed advisors, for all the time to really brainwash you and give you prejudiced opinion. If I am really doing something, this must be the experience. Sir, registrar, deputy registrar, sir, sign. I said, Jao. I have to read what I am signing. Sir, इधर sign करो. Sir, उधर sign करो. अरे, मुझे पढ़ने दो. मैं ही sign करता हूँ. So these people came and said, sir, सावधान रहिए. He's creating lots of problems. I said, ठीक है, मैं समझ गया. Then one staff came. I was doing something. आ रही है. He's coming. What am I supposed to do? Get ready. I said, जाने दो, आने दो. So she said. So I said, she sat down before me. I said, everybody is asking me, this is my behavior. I said, see, everybody is telling me that you are a troublemaker. And everybody is telling me that you are an outsourced employee, you must be having, to sack you. But I don't want to sack you. And she said, why not? If everybody is saying. I said, because you're my daughter. You're like my daughter. And I have faith in you. And I think you are not going to break my faith. I think from tomorrow onward, you will not sign in advance. You promise me? She said, I promise you. She never signed in advance. So what is this approach of the people? Usko nikal dijiye. So, power of love. When you give trust, you get trust. I don't like the suspicious paranoid types who are all the time dividing the world in a reductive manner, even good and bad, moral and immoral. Human nature is a realm of grey, black and white. Grey is also there. So that's meaning of power of love. Can love always succeed? No. That's why we have an army. We have the paramilitary. Can we give full power to the paramilitary? Certainly not. Shall we condone the atrocities of the army? Certainly not. That is why we have this power of the public opinion. We have the civil society. We have centers for the human rights also. So as a corrective, we must think of the correctives also and not blindly believe, because we must remember, Sanjeev ji, what Lord Acton says, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. So we have to be on our guards. Last question? Yes, later on comes. Gandhiji was a very powerful man. And many other revolutionaries like Silent Ghost, M.N. Roy, etc., who went, they were sheltered in America. And President Roosevelt was a great believer in the Indian democracy during World War II. During the First World War, Indian soldiers went and fought in Mesopotamia. During the Second World War, Indian soldiers were there in the Italian theater in Monte Cassino. They were there in Japanese theater. And one branch of the Indian Army broke away and they became the INA, Indian National Army. Azad Hind Force. They fought under the banner of Subhash Chandra Bose. So you see that Indians have really paid the price under one hope, that this will pave the way for India's independence. And so while Roosevelt said, yes, we have to give them the freedom, Winston Churchill, who was the Prime Minister during the Second World War, and after the war he said, notoriously, I have not become a Prime Minister to preside over the liquidation of the British Empire. That is the arrogance that we have. And during World War II, he said, we are here for the freed people. We are fighting for the liberation of the freed people against the Axis power. Germany and Japan, they stood for fascism and Nazism, and we stand for democracy. The Western world stands for democracy. Look at the arch hypocritical approach of the West when it came to liberation. And after the liberation, after the World War II, the European countries, nations and the states went back merrily. The Dutch went back to Indonesia and they ruled. And the French went back to Indochina and they ruled. And the Japanese also. They were a defeated nation. They had to give up access. Singapore became independent. I have to, cultural diplomacy, you have to understand the setting immediately after the Second World War. After the Second World War, the British helped us and they made us part of what is called the Commonwealth through the English language. Whichever colonies are speaking English language, they can come together. And they floated Commonwealth scholarship, British Council scholarship and all that. The Americans, on the other hand, were looking for allies that they would really help them to fight against the Soviet Union. Because during the Cold War, because it's neither war nor peace, for example, and the Americans were looking for allies, and they floated two power blocks. No doubt is private. One is called the NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, still going on still today. We thought after the collapse of the Cold War, NATO will cease to exist. NATO continues to exist because Russia continued to exist, and there is also expansionism, fear of expansionism. So the former Eastern European countries become part of the NATO itself. There's another power block that the Americans created, in cultural exchange, Fulbright program in India. And you said that I have been on a Fulbright program, Fulbright scholarship twice. When I got the Fulbright scholarship first time, one of my teachers said, previously he was half bright, now he is Fulbright. But that's not the meaning. And I got the second time, what would they say? And Fulbright is not J. William Fulbright. He's the architect of the program. I hope you were so excited as this. This is a Rhodes Scholarship also. Cecil Rhodes. If you say, you are an all-rounder, you go and join. The present, you know, the Vice Chancellor of the Law University, Bangalore Law University, I read in the paper, is a Rhodes Scholar. Cecil Rhodes, who amassed wealth, he had an empire, and Punch showed, a humorous journal Punch showed, that the Englishman had one leg in Cairo, another like a civilizing mission of not only Britain but the West itself. J. William Fulbright thought otherwise. Cecil wrote, at the fag end of his life, he amassed the wealth. And the wealth which was based on the exploitation of Africa. And there's a country which was named after him, believe it or not. Today it is called Zimbabwe, but at one time it was called Rhodesia. When I was growing up, it was called Rhodesia. Cecil Rhodes. Rhodesia was built. Can you imagine a company coming and taking over a whole continent? Can you imagine a company like East India Company coming to India, 1700, taking over? Can you imagine Ambani and Adani taking over a nation? This has been the fate of an ancient civilization, India. East India Company takes over. And in 1857, it passes into the hands of the king and the Queen Emperor itself. Cecil Rhodes is the architect of the Rhodes Scholarship. Soft power, cultural diplomacy, like British Council, and protest. And when there was a movement against to break the statues, toppling the statues, especially during the Black Lives Matter movement, I don't need to inform this bunch of very bright students about the Black Lives Matter movement that took place in many parts. Universities which were responsible for the transatlantic slave trade, like Brown University, like Princeton and Harvard University, for example, they've had a colonial legacy. And students in those universities clamor, and they said, we must really dismantle the colonial legacy of our own university, the leading Brown University. And I was in Rhode Island, Providence, but Brown University is located. Said, we must make reparations. So Americans are using cultural diplomacy, but the students in American universities are also saying, what kind of a cultural diplomacy we want? We want a cultural diplomacy which also dismantles the culture. So one example I have given. The second example is a scholarship that not only I, but 10,000, more than 10,000, Indian scholars and others have benefited from this. 1996, 10,000 scholars have benefited. And it has been said, the largest migration of the students, the scholars, after the fall of the Rome to Constantinople. The largest migration of scholars, movement of scholars, after the fall of Constantinople, during the medieval period, for example. There was a migration of the scholars. So much for cultural understanding, geographical understanding. So there is, despite the presence of internet and smartphone, is so much of cultural misunderstanding, mistrust, and stereotyping, gender stereotyping, cultural stereotyping, community stereotyping. What is the answer? The answer is cultural exchange. And the answer is cultural exchange can become not only a soft power, but it is a substantial way of understanding each other. So the motto of Fulbright program is to promote mutual understanding, because mutual understanding is very rare in today's world. And it was the firm belief of J. William Fulbright, who also paradoxically played the role of segregation in Alabama itself and Fayetteville, that you have wonderful personality, progressive personalities, who are also responsible for reactionary policies. He went on a Rhodes Scholarship program to Oxford University, and he thought that our own citizens should become citizens of the world. Not in the manner in which the Greek thought, because women were not really certainly part of Athens. Women did not have a citizenship rights. Slaves did not have a citizenship right. Slaves were made to fight as gladiators against animals in the Colosseum in Rome itself. And women were spectators. It is right up to 1957 in France also, women did not have the right to vote. So you must know the underpinning of the Western system itself. Not always very educated, not always very enlightened, not always very democratic, not always very progressive. So we must know about that. It was a firm belief of people like Senator J. William Fulbright that through the Fulbright program, the people of the world can have mutual understanding. And the biggest responsibility for factor for war is mistrust, misunderstanding. How can we have better communication across the world? How can you have further understanding across the world, mutual understanding to the world? And when you really cross cultures and civilizations, you come to know, as Lionel Trilling said, how we cultures really take. We come to know about the spirit of different cultures. Today we know contrary cultures, and contrary cultures very often lead to mistrust and values which are really inimical to civilized living. That has been the major goal. Has it really survived? It has survived because of its independence from the American foreign policy establishment. It is created in many parts through what is called the binational foundations. Half Indians, half Americans, which is located in Delhi. Today, we have Fulbright Nehru Fellowship also, because Indian government has invested money. When you invest money, you have a sense of belonging. But when you don't spend money, you don't have a sense of belonging. So I think, in brief, I would say that Fulbright program has achieved a lot. But today, when we see the presence of Rhodes Scholarship, Fulbright Scholarship, we must not blind ourselves to the underpinning, the ideological underpinning of the formation. In 1945 itself, at the end of the Second World War, J. William Fulbright, the senator, and become the chairman of the U.S. Foreign Policy, committee, he decided that all the items which are left after the Second World War, the excess items, the armaments which were scattered in different parts, from Japan to Europe to Italy, they should be used as a kind of what he called swords into plowshare program. The swords into plows.
When we talk about international conflicts, when we talk about cooperation, Sir has brought in the living testimony that he has been a scholar too. Fulbright Scholarship, Rhodes, Salzburg, so those names are there. But he has brought in all how to go about it and how to reach about it. It is not just that understanding that we are talking about fostering in terms of words that we read. He himself has lived and has produced that scholarship in front of you. I'm not going to into much of the details now. You have to find it for yourself. And these are the dream objectives for you. If you will talk about, sir, after doing 3 years of my bachelor, I want to be a Fulbright fellow. Then you will come to know what is the hard work that it requires. Then you will come to know what Rhodes means. Then you will come to know. So today he is in the front of you, and this is a historical day for me to listen to a person who has lived through and brought in the history in such a manner. If you will go by, you have to consult at least 10 books. You know what is the Iron Curtain. You have heard about me. Mr. Churchill, we have talked about, but that is what he has brought in front of you in terms of this cultural diplomacy. It is always we talk about nation state in terms of power, and power means the dominance that military forces. But today when he talked about that these swords should be turned into plow, that means what? That the means to enrich you, to empower you, and to foster that culture of mutual understanding to each other, and culture is the mean. So now I have told sir that these students are very bright, and they have been with me to grade also, and now it is you to talk about international affairs, what is sir has brought in you, that's Bethlehem to Mesopotamia to Italian battle theatres to Second World War. So now the stage is set for you, and sir is ready to answer you. And diplomacy and foreign policy is nothing new to now.
Out of love. Heartburn. Here is a chance. How to fall out of love. To read Graham Greene's The End of an Affair. Graham Greene. So it's beautiful, I tell you. If you are engaged in the world of Keats, John Keats, much have I traveled. You have English faculty here? English literature?
Yes, member.
Yeah, okay. No, and Keats says, and much have I traveled in the realm of gold. What is the realm of gold? Literature, texts, beautiful texts, classics, for example. So I think, today I was speaking in the history department about the discovery of a Red Sea port, Berenica.